Hello, I'm a pulmonologist. For the last 28 years, I've sat across from patients with emphysema, and for most of that time, medicine has had to give them a very hard answer. Really, an answer of resignation.
For about 100 years, that was the truth. It was a difficult truth, but it was honest. It was what all the science we had pointed to. But this year, in 2024, that answer became obsolete. A team published data in one of the most respected scientific journals on the planet that just completely rewrote what we thought was possible for lung repair.
I want you to think for a second. Think about the last time you had to stop, catch your breath, doing something that you used to do without a second thought. If that feels familiar, I really hope you'll stay with me for this explainer. Okay, so what's all this about? Where is this new hope really coming from? Well, it all starts with a remarkable study out of Shanghai. Researchers there followed a group of COPD patients who got a transplant of their own lung cells, a very specific type called P63 positive progenitor cells. And here's what's so incredible about this. These aren't some foreign stem cells from a lab. No, these are the patient's own cells. They're like the lung's internal repair crew, already living there. The researchers just took them out, grew them in the lab until there were over 1 billion of them, and then put them right back into the damaged airways.
And the results, well, they were something that we in medicine have always been taught was impossible. In 2 of the patients, the emphysema lesions that we could see clearly on their CT scans, they disappeared completely after just 24 weeks. I don't mean they got smaller. I mean they were gone. That is the first time that has ever been documented in human beings.
And this wasn't just a fluke in a couple of patients. The data across the board was stunning. Let's look at diffusing capacity. That's just a measure of how well your lungs get oxygen into your bloodstream. In the group that got the cells, it improved by more than 18%. Now look at the control group. Their function fell by over 17%. You do the math. That's a nearly 36-point difference between the 2 groups. It's just staggering. So what does that mean in the real world? It means people could actually live better. On average, patients could walk more than 30 meters farther in a 6-minute test. You know, that might not sound like a lot, but that can be the difference between being trapped in your house and being able to get out and walk your dog around the block again.
Okay, I have to stop here and be crystal clear about something. This treatment is not available in any U.S. clinic. You're going to see commercial clinics out there charging thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars for unproven stem cell therapies for COPD. They do not have FDA backing, and you should avoid them. The only legitimate way to access these new therapies is through a formal clinical trial, which you can look for at clinicaltrials.gov.
Now, to really get why this discovery matters so much, we first have to understand a tough question. Why does emphysema keep getting worse, even years after someone quit smoking? The answer is that the initial damage lights a kind of fire inside the lungs, a fire that learns to sustain itself.
So here's how that cycle works. Smoking kicks off this massive inflammatory response, and it flips a master switch in your genes called NF-κB. The problem is, even when you quit smoking, that switch can get stuck in the on position. Then, as we get older, after about age 50, our body's main protective antioxidant, it's called glutathione, it starts to decline. So your lungs' defenses are down, and this smoldering fire learns to feed on other things. A poor diet, not being active, pollution. This is why stopping smoking was absolutely necessary, but for many, it just wasn't enough. And all that inflammation has a physical consequence. It literally destroys the walls of the tiny air sacs, the alveoli. See, those walls are what hold the smallest airways open. Without that support, the airways collapse when you try to breathe out, so you can't get all the air out. Stale air gets trapped, which overinflates your lungs and flattens your diaphragm, making it physically harder and harder to pull in the next breath. Which brings us to what I believe is the most important part of our talk today. Because while we wait for that incredible P63 therapy to become available, there is a powerful, evidence-backed protocol, a list of 5 priorities that you can start working on today to fight back. This is not about passively waiting for a cure down the road. This is about taking action now, preparing the ground. We're going to cover 5 key areas: supervised pulmonary rehab, fighting inflammation with your diet, getting enough protein, a few targeted supplements, and getting checked for sleep apnea.
Priority number 1, without a doubt, is pulmonary rehabilitation. This is the single highest impact thing you can do. A massive review of studies coming out in 2025. We're talking nearly 19,000 people. It confirms just how powerful this is. And you can start right now, today, with 2 breathing exercises: pursed lip breathing, which helps keep those airways from collapsing, and diaphragmatic breathing to retrain that main breathing muscle. Number 2 is nutrition. Specifically, shifting to a Mediterranean style of eating. Believe it or not, what you eat has a direct line to the inflammation in your lungs. We call it the gut-lung axis. So you want to focus on things like fatty fish, fiber from lentils and chickpeas, good olive oil, and lots of dark leafy greens. You are literally eating to put out that inflammatory fire. Priority 3 is protein. This is so often overlooked. Up to 60% of people with severe COPD also have significant muscle loss. And guess what? The muscles you use to breathe are muscles, just like your biceps. To protect them, you need to be aiming for about 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein for every kilogram of your body weight, every single day. All right, 4th is a few key supplements that actually have good evidence. First is NAC, 600 milligrams a day. It helps your body rebuild that master antioxidant glutathione. Now, a critical warning: NAC can interact with blood thinners like warfarin and with nitroglycerin. Next is vitamin D, but only if your levels are low. You have to get tested first. And finally, magnesium, which can help relax the airways. But it should not be used by anyone with kidney problems. Now, the 5th priority is sleep. It's crucial. If you snore, if you wake up with headaches, please ask your doctor for a sleep study. Having both COPD and sleep apnea, what we call overlap syndrome, can make things much worse. So, you might be thinking, does all this stuff, does it actually make a difference? I want to tell you about a patient of mine. Let's call her Margaret. She brings this all to life. Margaret is 67, lives in Columbus, Ohio. When I met her, she had completely stopped walking her dog. She just couldn't do it anymore. Well, after just 8 weeks of pulmonary rehab and really focusing on her diet, she improved her 6-minute walk test by 45 meters. Now, get this, her official breathing tests, the spirometry numbers, they hadn't really changed, but her life had. And Margaret's story just shines a light on this huge problem. Right now, about 15% of American adults over 40 have some form of obstructive lung disease. And I promise you, the vast majority of them have never been told that these kinds of effective, life-changing interventions are available to them right now. And that brings us to the end, to the final and I think most crucial point. We are living in this unique window of time, this moment between an incredible scientific breakthrough and it becoming a daily reality in the clinic. Realistically, the P63 therapy is probably 3 to 5 years away. And what the Shanghai study strongly suggests is that patients who had milder disease got the best results. So acting now with this 5-point plan, that's not just treading water. It's actively preparing your body, getting your lungs in the best possible shape for when these new therapies finally arrive. Everything we've talked about is available to you today. I want to leave you with this thought. You have so much more power to influence the course of this disease than you have probably ever been told. The question is no longer if the human lung can regenerate. That question has been answered. The question now is whether you will give your lungs the chance to try.
Today, we are going to talk about something that's a huge part of pulmonary rehab, but for some reason, it just gets overlooked. We're going to dive deep into the muscles you use to breathe. Now, this isn't about some miracle cure for your lungs. It's about making the whole system work smarter, not just harder.
So, let me start by asking you a question that might actually surprise you. We've all been told, right, with emphysema, that feeling of breathlessness, that struggle for air, it all comes from the damage in your lungs. But what if that's not the whole story? What if a huge part of that struggle isn't really about your lungs at all?
And right here, this is the big reveal. A huge chunk of that breathless feeling, the thing that makes you stop halfway up the stairs, it's coming from your muscles. Muscles that are just plain exhausted, undertrained. And here's the most important part. You can't rebuild lung tissue, we know that. But muscles? Muscles can absolutely be trained. That's a game changer. Okay, so let's get into this surprising culprit. We're going to break down exactly why your muscles, and not just your lungs, are at the very center of the daily fight with emphysema. And you know what it all starts with? It's a deep, deep sense of fatigue.
You know that feeling, right? When you try to walk to the mailbox and it feels like you've just hit a brick wall? Well, that's not just your lungs struggling to get oxygen. That is the feeling of your breathing muscles giving out, because they are overworked, they're weak, and honestly, they're set up in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to work correctly.
To really get why these muscles get so tired, we have to look at what's going on inside your chest. It's basically a mechanical crisis. Emphysema kicks off this whole domino effect that starts with the very architecture of your lungs. Okay, so picture a healthy lung. You've got all these millions of tiny air sacs, and they kind of act like an elastic harness. They physically hold the little airways open so when you breathe out, the air can actually escape. It's a really smart, simple system. But with emphysema, that harness is broken. It's gone. So when you go to exhale, those little airways just collapse on themselves, and that traps all this old, stale air inside. This causes the lungs to get bigger and bigger, to overinflate, and that is where the real catastrophe starts for your number one breathing muscle. Now, check out the difference here. A healthy diaphragm has this beautiful, powerful dome shape. That's where it gets all its leverage, all its power. But in emphysema, those big, overinflated lungs are constantly pushing down on it, squishing it flat. And a flat diaphragm is a weak diaphragm. It's lost its oomph. It has to work so much harder just to pull in a single breath. So when your main muscle, the diaphragm, gets tired, your body kind of panics. It calls in the emergency reserves, these accessory muscles up in your neck and your shoulders. The problem is, these muscles were made for short bursts of action, like lifting something heavy, not for the slow, steady work of breathing 24/7. Using them all the time is what creates that constant tension and ache in your shoulders. It means that just breathing, just sitting there breathing, becomes a workout that drains all your energy for the day.
But here's the really good news. Seriously. While the anatomy, the shape of your diaphragm is compromised, the consequences of that, how you actually feel and get through your day, are highly trainable. We have a clear, proven, 3-part battle plan to fight back.
And this plan has 3 key parts, and they all work together. It's a kind of 1-2-3 punch. You've got pursed lip breathing, diaphragmatic retraining, and then this really powerful technique that you may not have heard of called inspiratory muscle training, or IMT for short.
First up, pursed lip breathing. It is so simple. You breathe in through your nose for a count of 2, and then you breathe out really slowly through gently pursed lips for a count of 4. That slow exhale creates just enough back pressure in your airways to physically prop them open so that stale air can finally get out. You're basically creating your own manual version of that elastic harness we talked about. Second is retraining your diaphragm. Now, the point here isn't to magically make your diaphragm dome-shaped again. That's not going to happen. The goal is to actually retrain your brain, your nervous system, to use the diaphragm first, instead of jumping straight to those neck and shoulder muscles. It's all about teaching your body to be way more efficient with the tools it has. And the third piece, the one that most people have never even heard of, is IMT. I want you to think of this as literally taking your breathing muscles to the gym. Use this small handheld device that adds resistance when you breathe in, directly strengthening your diaphragm. It is weightlifting for your breath.
And we know this works. The proof is incredible. A huge review of 43 different studies that just came out in 2024 found that IMT beefed up those breathing muscles by an average of 14 centimeters of water pressure. Now, that's just a medical measurement, but trust me, that is a significant measurable power-up. But what does that new strength actually mean for your daily life? Well, it means that, on average, people could walk 32 meters farther in a 6-minute test. Now, to researchers, anything over 25 meters is considered clinically meaningful. In plain English, that means it's an improvement you can actually feel. That's the difference between staying home and being able to walk around the grocery store.
All right, so numbers are one thing, but let's see what this looks like for a real person, because that's when it all clicks. And after that, we're going to cover some really important warnings you have to know before you even think about starting.
So I want you to meet Robert. He was 71, and he felt what so many people feel. He'd just accepted his fate. He figured his world was just going to keep getting smaller and smaller, and that was that.
Now look at this table. This right here, this is the whole story. After 12 weeks of this training, look at that first line. His lung function, the actual damage in his lungs, it was completely unchanged. But his life, totally transformed. He could walk 41 meters farther. And look at that last line, he didn't need his oxygen tank on those walks anymore. He got his life back.
Now, to get results like Robert's, you have to avoid a few common traps. With pursed lip breathing, it's a gentle purse, like you're going to whistle. Don't squeeze your lips tight. With the IMT device, don't get macho and crank up the resistance too fast. And with diaphragmatic breathing, you can't just do it lying down. You have to practice it while sitting, then standing, and eventually while you walk.
Okay, and this is critically important, so please listen carefully. If you have serious heart issues or something called pulmonary hypertension, IMT can cause big pressure changes inside your chest. For most people with COPD, this training is incredibly safe, but for that specific group, you absolutely must talk to your doctor before you even consider starting.
So, after all of this, what's the big takeaway? What does this all mean for you? Well, it means we have to completely redefine what's permanent and what's actually possible when you're living with emphysema.
And if you remember one thing today, please let it be this slide. Your pulmonary function, that's the physical damage to your lungs. Yes, that is permanent. But your functional capacity, how you actually walk, live, and operate in your day-to-day life, that is not permanent. It is profoundly, absolutely improvable.
You've been told over and over that the damage is permanent. And that part's true. But what nobody might have told you is just how much of your daily struggle, your daily breathlessness, is coming from muscles that were just never taught how to adapt. And now you know there's a proven way to train them. You can't change your lungs, but you sure can change your life.
All right, so we've talked about retraining your body with pulmonary rehab, and we've covered how to optimize your breathing mechanics. Today, though, we're hitting the third absolutely crucial piece of the puzzle, the fuel. Because, everything else just works so much better when you get a handle on lung inflammation by changing what's on your plate. So let's dive right in.
So let's start with the one question that, honestly, frustrates so many people living with emphysema. You did the hardest part, right? You quit smoking. But for some reason, the damage, that constant inflammation, it just keeps going. It feels like this little fire inside your lungs that just refuses to go out. So why? Why does that happen?
Well, it turns out the source of that stubborn fire, and more importantly, the secret to finally putting it out, might be hiding in a place most people would never even think to look: your dinner plate. Now, to really understand this, we need to take a little detour. We're going to step away from the lungs for a second and focus on, of all places, your gut. I know, it sounds kind of weird, but there is a direct biological highway that connects the two. And it all starts with one very, very specific question. Now, hold on. This isn't a test or some trick question to make you feel bad. This is a genuinely important clinical question. Why? Because your answer is directly tied to the level of inflammatory activity happening inside your lungs' tiny air sacs, your alveoli, at this very moment. It reveals a documented biological pathway that's just incredible. And this pathway, it has a name. It's called the gut-lung axis. And I really want to be crystal clear here. This is not some fluffy wellness term from a lifestyle magazine. This is documented, peer-reviewed biology that's been confirmed in human studies. It's a real physical connection that has some pretty profound implications for anyone with lung disease.
Okay, so how does this actually work? I mean, how on earth can a lentil you eat for lunch possibly affect that fire inside your lungs? Well, the mechanism is surprisingly direct and honestly pretty darn elegant.
So let's just follow the journey step by step. First, you eat something with a lot of fiber. Then, the good bacteria in your gut get to work fermenting it. This process creates these amazing little molecules called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs for short. Think of these as tiny little calm-down signals. They get into your bloodstream, travel all the way to your lungs, and basically tell your overactive immune cells to just cool it. You are literally manufacturing your own anti-inflammatory medicine with every high-fiber meal. And look, this isn't just a cool theory. The science backing this up is solid and it's growing every year. Study after study is confirming it. The healthier your gut bacteria are, the less severe your COPD tends to be, and the fewer dangerous flare-ups you're likely to have. The connection is it's undeniable at this point.
Okay, enough of the why. Let's get down to the what. Let's talk about the specific foods you can start eating to put this powerful gut-lung connection to work for you. Priority number 1, right at the top of the list, is fatty fish. We're talking 2 to 3 times a week. The omega-3s in fish, like salmon and sardines, directly get involved in the chemical reactions in your body, and they basically tell your body to pump the brakes on making inflammatory molecules. They shift the whole system away from being on fire. And yeah, if you really can't stand fish, a good quality fish oil supplement is okay. But trust me, the whole food is always going to be better. And if you're wondering just how strong this evidence is, take a look at this number. 500,000 people. That's how many were in a massive study that suggests this isn't just a coincidence. It's likely that eating fish is a direct cause of slower lung function decline. I mean, that is an incredibly powerful finding. All right, priority number 2, legumes, 4 to 5 times a week. Now, this one is a game changer. Lentils, chickpeas, black beans. This is the super premium fuel for those good gut bacteria we were talking about. This is what they need to make those anti-inflammatory SCFAs. It's like you're fueling up your own internal medicine factory. Just a little pro tip here, add them into your diet slowly over a couple of weeks, just to let your system get used to all that good fiber. Just stop and think about the impact of that for a second. For most people, making just this one change, adding some beans or lentils to your week, will more than double the amount of fuel you're giving to your internal anti-inflammatory factory. That is an incredible return on your investment. Next up, a really simple but really powerful swap. As you can see, those highly refined vegetable oils, they're like gasoline on the fire. Extra virgin olive oil, on the other hand, helps put it out. And the key here isn't to just reduce the bad oils, it is to replace them. Get them out of your kitchen completely. And let's add 2 more heavy hitters to your plate. First, berries. Their powerful antioxidants act like a personal bodyguard for your lung cells. And second, dark leafy greens like spinach or kale. They're loaded with magnesium, which is amazing because it actually helps relax the tiny muscles around your airways, which can make breathing just a little bit easier. So we've talked about all the good stuff to add, but, and this is just as important, maybe even more important, we have to talk about what to take away. It's not enough to just add firefighters. You've got to stop the arsonists too. Now, these foods aren't just neutral, they are actively making things worse. But I want to point out that last one, because it's something people often miss. Really big meals. A super full stomach literally pushes up on your diaphragm, giving your lungs less room to expand. It's pure physics. The solution is so simple. Just switch to 4 or 5 smaller meals throughout the day. Okay, I know that's a lot of information. I want to make this tangible for you. So let's look at what this means for a real person. Let's set some realistic expectations for how long this all takes. And, crucially, let's cover a very important warning. I want you to meet Dorothy. She started with just 2 simple changes. She swapped her cooking oil and she added lentils a few times a week.
That's it. After only 4 weeks, her C-reactive protein, that's a key marker of inflammation they measure in your blood, had dropped by 22%. 22%! That's just incredible, and it shows you how quickly your body is ready to respond when you give it the right inputs. Okay, I need everybody to listen to this very carefully. This is critically important. If you have significant chronic kidney disease, we're talking stage 3 or higher, please listen up. Legumes and dark leafy greens are high in potassium. Now, for healthy kidneys, that's no problem at all, but damaged kidneys can struggle to regulate it, and that can become dangerous. This does not mean you can't eat these foods, but it absolutely means you must talk to your doctor first to figure out the right amounts for you. No exceptions.
Understanding the timeline is so important for sticking with this. The very first changes are invisible. They're happening deep in your gut and in your blood. But then after a month or two, you might start to actually feel it. Maybe you're sleeping a bit better, and within 2 to 3 months, that's when you can see real measurable differences in how much you can do and how you feel. It's not a quick fix, but the results are real and they are durable. So now, let's zoom out and put this final powerful piece of the puzzle right where it belongs.
Here it is. This is your complete system. Think of it like working on a car. Pulmonary rehab trains the engine. The breathing exercises we talked about, that optimizes the mechanics of that engine. And this gut-lung diet, that changes the very fuel you put in the tank. And it reduces the internal rust, that corrosion caused by inflammation. They all work together, and each part makes the other two even more effective.
I really want to leave you with this final thought. It is so easy to feel like you're stuck, but you have so much more agency than you think. You have a system of interventions, all backed by science, that can truly change how your body functions. The lung you have right now, that's not your destiny. That's your starting point. And how you choose to work with it, starting at your very next meal, can make all the difference in the world.